WP Company, LLC, which is the Washington Post.
They are so scared of you because you took on Goliath, you beat them, and now they're all piling in because they all tell so many lies now. Their executives have told them, go ahead and lie. They wouldn't lie as much just 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, they say outrageous lies about you and I and others constantly, and I guess they're scared we're going to start suing them, so they want the court to say they're allowed to enrich themselves off lying about people. That is incredible.
Yeah, that's what they're asking the court to do, because they're putting it in light that this is an alternative for punitive damages. And, of course, you can't get punitive damage against an estate.
I wonder if they'll I'm surprised Brian Williams isn't a signatory to this.
Anyway, though, getting back to it, Alex, I never dreamed that this would explode to the level that it has. That this is a who's who of the entire mainstream media of the United States of America.
I know it is. Former Governor Jesse Ventura, who stood up, fought the hard fight, was told it's really going to be hard to win, still did it because he was lied about. He was defamed. They said he was there happy that vets were dead when he'd been at their commencement, and he just stood up against it, and he won, and he used the American system to do it, and they're trying to overthrow our system right now.
Well, when tragedy happens, people always want to start pointing the finger of blame. And of course, now Drudge Report is on the receiving end of that, saying that he is helping to foment this race war. Drudge is, one of the largest news aggregators in the world, and that's what he does is put the news stories out there. So here we have tweets blaming the Charleston shooting here on Drudge Report, and now we're wondering, how fast will they blame it on INFOWARS? Because they always like to pull our website into this, even though we have been condemning racial violence since the Ferguson episode took place. We have been condemning it, but we are pointing out how this racial division is being used to foment this civil unrest. Now, again, pointing out that it's happening. Whether you want to talk about it or not, things are happening. Now, I talked to you a little earlier in the show about activists now starting the hashtag #WeWillShootBack, which is a nod to the armed resistance in the Mississippi Freedom Movement during the Civil Rights era. So now people are, this hashtag is trending now, #WeWillShootBack, basically saying that they're not going to lay down and be terrorized by white supremacists. But here at INFOWARS, while we are exposing one side of the race war, we reported how Soros has funded the Black Lives Matter movement, but we would be naive to not consider some other possibilities, some other useful idiots in this race war. Now, we know historically both sides are funded by the globalists. We know that both sides are agitated there a little bit. Soros isn't just funding Black Lives Matter. We know he's also helping to back the neo-Nazis in the Ukraine. So you see, it's kind of all over the place. So who is funding the other side? There are very powerful people in these white supremacist groups. And of course, these are people who also would like to see a race war take place. Now, this stuff has happened in the past. We've seen white supremacists try and start these race wars in the past, but the climate has never been right until now. Now, let's take a look at one historically infamous event, Helter Skelter. Now, this was Charles Manson and his Manson family that were believing in this Helter Skelter apocalyptic type war. Manson had been predicting racial war for some time before he used this term Helter Skelter. And he said that this war would start in the summer of '69. And in late June of that year, he told a male family member that Helter Skelter was ready to happen. And he said, Blackie never did anything without Whitey showing him how. And he said, it looks like we're going to have to show Blackie how to do it. So obviously this very, coming from this very racist paradigm, he then goes on to have his family commit these gruesome murders with the intent that they could pin it on Black people to foment this race war. So they did all of this to instigate this race war. And, now this Charleston shooter, Dylan Roof, is saying that he did what he did to start a race war. So it's not just this Black Lives Matter or the Red Guards or whatever. We do need to take a look at some of these other extremist groups in America. A family member told a journalist that Dylan Roof was a member of some racist groups and that he had become a loner in recent months. And we've seen patches on a jacket that was worn by the shooter, and those are symbols of the white supremacist movement. The patch that has the orange, white, and blue stripes is the flag of South Africa's apartheid government. The patch below that is the flag of the former white-controlled country of Rhodesia, which later became Zimbabwe. And also, South Carolina is home to 19 known hate groups. You can take a look at the map there. This includes 2 factions of the Ku Klux Klan and 4 white nationalist organizations. This is according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, who we know likes to keep track of these hate groups. Now, in July 2014, residents in Oconee County, South Carolina, reportedly found bags in their street that contained candy and a leaflet that was trying to recruit for the Ku Klux Klan. And it said, "Save our land, join the Klan." Now, when people called the phone number on that flyer, it was trying to recruit people in response to immigration, but it mimics the twisted motivation of Dylan Roof. He told a friend that he thought blacks were taking over the world and someone needed to do something about it for the white race. So obviously we're seeing the same sort of twisted motivation there. And, also we can't overlook the fact, look how quickly the KKK rallied support there for the police officer Darren Wilson, who, of course, shot and killed Michael Brown there in Ferguson. I thought the race war was going to pop off right then and there, because to me, that was pretty shocking and very bold and quite curious. There are useful idiots on both sides of the race war. Do you think the FBI is just going into mosques and trying to instigate someone into, committing jihad? We report on that all the time. There are agent provocateurs everywhere. The Daily Mail is reporting of hundreds of messages now being posted by neo-Nazis in one of their internet forums in support of Dylan Thomas, in support of what he's done, and talking about this pending race war. So, someone tweeted out, "Sometimes in war, there are casualties." And another one writes, "When will it be acceptable to fight back?" So this is all going on, and we can't ignore that. We can't just say that there's terrorists here and provocateurs here and ignore a whole other faction here in this race war. And so obviously this ongoing media threat now with the guns and racism, it is an attempt to reopen a wound, create sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy for this race war. And we've been warning you with Operation Garden Plot and all of these other long-term plans that have been put in place for the civil unrest. Now is the time, and we're seeing it in all different areas. But we know, now that most of us are intelligent enough to know that this foreign terrorism is really just an excuse to take away our rights. Now they are having to create an enemy from within.
The massacre at St. James's Church in Cape Town, South Africa, on the 25th of July 1993, sent shockwaves around the world. That night, the evening service was interrupted by a group of men who burst through the doors and fired indiscriminately on the congregation of some 1,300 people. Such damage was wreaked in 30 seconds that the lives of many would be affected for years to come. The attack left 11 dead and more than 50 seriously injured.
Just after the song item, as it was coming to an end, I heard pops and I thought there was something wrong with the sound system. And then people started screaming and they started crouching or falling down between the seats. I did the same thing. There was an explosion, and shortly after that a massive explosion, and I felt what I now know to be shrapnel hit the side of my leg because the hand grenade exploded 2 rows behind us. And when I looked down, there was just blood down the side of my body and on the carpet, and my trousers were covered in blood.
Yes, the stories abound of acts of bravery in the reflex of the moment.
Just a little bit of what happened in that church. Certainly a horrific situation. These were terrorists who came in, 4 men with AK-47s, hurling grenades, shooting at a congregation of 1,000 people. Their intention was to kill everyone. The only reason that didn't happen was because of the man we're about to speak to today. Charles van Wyk is a South African missionary. He was there that day visiting that church. He had a .38 with only 5 shots. You know, God saved the nation of Israel with David having 5 stones. He ran these guys off with God's help with this .38 loaded with only 5 cartridges. He's the author of a best-selling book, Shooting Back, The Right and Duty of Self-Defense. And of course, it's about the events of that day, but it is also about the importance of being able to defend yourself. Your right, your duty to defend other people. And that's what we're going to talk to him about today. Again, Charles van Wyk. Thank you for joining us. Now, I was talking to you and you just said that you're a missionary. You basically go all over Africa. You're not really associated with a particular church. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. I'm a full-time missionary. I work mainly in Central Africa and Southern Africa. And that means I visit various churches and involved with many different denominations.
So were you visiting that church that day?
The St. James Church that I was going to was actually my home church at the time. So I was a parishioner there. I was a member of the congregation. I wasn't in any leadership at that time in that specific church.
Okay, and tell us from your perspective, what was happening immediately before the shooting broke out at St. James from your perspective?
Well, we were sitting in the church service. It's quite a large church. There were about 1,000 people present that evening. It could easily seat 1,500 people. And we were listening to some young people that were singing on the stage. And the church is built very much like a cinema. So it's high at the back and low in the front with a stage. And the young people were singing to us. And we were just sitting listening to them before the incident occurred.
And then what was your first clue that something was going on? How did it happen from your perspective?
Well, right at the front door of the church where everybody could see right next to the stage, there was a noise. And I thought, you know, these people should really come in at the back door. They shouldn't make such a big scene at the front. And these terrorists stepped in to the congregation. And it was interesting because I had thought that there was a play taking place. And it's only when they started opening up fire with their automatic assault rifles and they lobbed the grenades into the congregation. And I saw the effects of the rifle shooting where wood was actually shooting out of the benches, splinters were shooting up into the air, that I realized this was not a show or a play that was taking place, that this was a serious terrorist attack on the congregation.
You know, I hear that over and over again. People always say, yeah, I thought it was a play. You hear that a lot from people. It takes a while for it to register that this is really happening, doesn't it?
Yeah, David, that's right. It takes a couple I don't want to say a couple of seconds. It's probably a split second to realize what's going on. But it's almost like your brain and your eyes are trying to communicate with each other that this is reality. And it's not a game. It's not a play. And you need to react accordingly. Exactly.
Now, once you realized this was really happening, what did you do at that point?
We went down onto the ground as low as possible. Everybody ducked down. They tried to get as low as possible below the benches, underneath the benches, and tried to keep their heads down. It was interesting because some people, for instance, one little girl, she just froze. She couldn't move. And her little friends next to her, Richard O'Keel, who was 17, and another young friend, they went down onto the ground. And so Richard was concerned about the little one sitting up, and he knelt on his knees and went up into the air to pull her down to the ground. And as he went up, he took a bullet in the back of the head, trying to save her life. And another young man, Gerard Harker, is 21 years old. He had a hand grenade land in the aisle next to him. And he fell on top of the grenade with his full body and took a full blow to himself to try and protect the people around him. And his younger brother sitting next to him was also killed in the incident. I went down like everybody else, and I pulled out a .38 special little snub-nose revolver, commonly known as a Saturday night special. And I knelt behind the bench in front of me, and I took 2 shots at the attackers. The challenge was that I was sitting about 4th row from the back of the church. And as I mentioned, it's a big 1,500 seater hall that we were in.
Yeah.
And I just realized I took 2 shots and I realized I'm far too far away from the attackers. I'm going to have to try and get in behind them at close range.